Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to tonight's session of Unplugged with Ross. My name is Roslyn Miner. Such a pleasure to have you here. Tonight's topic is a career corner. Against the odds, a great story. And I'm really honored to have our guest panelist tonight, Mbogo Bunyi, who's a leadership coach, a development practitioner with more than 20 years experience across sub-Saharan Africa healthcare sector. Background in biochemistry and psychology. I'm passionate about mentoring emerging leaders and advancing meaningful impact through partnerships with governments, organizations, and communities. Mbogo, karibu sana.
Asante sana, Roslyn. I'm glad to be here.
Really happy and excited to have you here. As is the norm, let's start the evening with a few interesting statistics and facts. A global survey by LinkedIn found that over 60% of professionals feel stuck or uncertain about their career at some point. Many professionals report feeling behind compared to peers, especially in their late 20s to mid 30s. Studies in behavioral science suggest that progress is often non-visible for long periods before outcomes show, especially in a skills-based or leadership role. What looks like a plateau is often a period of skill consolidation and internal growth. A significant portion of career transitions are unplanned, often driven by economic shifts, organizational changes, personal circumstances, exposure to new opportunities. Many professionals report that their most defining career moves were not part of an original plan. I think a lot of us can relate to that. Research from Deloitte shows that professionals increasingly define success beyond title and pay, prioritizing well-being, flexibility, meaningful work. Last but not least, professionals with mentors are more likely to experience career progression and satisfaction than those without. Yet many people navigate key career decisions without structured guidance. So, tonight we get to hear from Bogo, the topic being Against the Odds, a great story. Having heard or listened to the interesting statistics or facts, Bogo, what are your initial thoughts?
Interesting and relatable. I took note of some. The large portion of 50% of people who feel stuck, and I'm like, yeah, I've been there for sure. Been with others who we have had and shared those conversations and continue to have those conversations. So it's interesting to have a number behind that. The feeling behind and compared to peers is one I also relate with and through discussions with others or with self, and that causes a lot of dissatisfaction or a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure on self, alongside with not being stuck. For the non-visible progress, before results come up, I run. I tried to do some running, and that's what I related it to, because before you get any, and I'm sure it's the same in most athletic endeavors, before you get great reductions in time, there might be periods of feeling stuck and keeping on practicing without seeing any change. And I'm like, wow, so this is also in the real life space, right? And you've just got to like keep at it and give yourself some time to measure, to measure where you're at. And as for the unplanned career shifts, I smiled because as we get into the story, I definitely have had that and continue to experience that. And so to see that it's common is also something that makes me say interesting. And the role of mentors or partners. I was listening to podcasts that talk about this, that we're in an age of support. Call it tutor, call it coach, call it mentor, call it whatever the role is. But that is more and more a big part of what people either need or benefit from. So having the research behind that is also interesting. So yeah, good to hear all of this, Rose.
Now, in consideration that that's just the statistics, let's jump into the topic of the day, and let's jump into straight to the questions. And I'll start with When you think back to the beginning of your career, what stands out most about that season of your life?
Um, yeah, so looking to my life, when I think about my career, kind of almost about 25 years now, 23,
Mhm.
I, I have three, I think about in three phases or three chapters. Let me call it three chapters up to date. And so the beginning will be chapter one, and that was the first, call it about 2 to 3 years. And and what stood out for me most was confusion because this is post campus. Huh? So post campus, I've done my biochemistry degree. I'm all wow, great. Let's go out into the job market. At the time when I started, the idea was to get into medicine. So this was kind of like a what's called a pre-med kind of exposure, and to find that connection was not as clear as to where do I go, where do I fit, what else do people with biochemistry do, and then I started learning about the opportunities as I tried to investigate getting into medicine at some point. So confusion, I would say, or a lot of like, where do I go, where do I fit, actually that's the one, like where do I fit with this tool that I have and this training that I have. And so it was, within what else can be done with this degree, what was my ideal plan. And then I discovered this thing called management trainee, and I was like, oh wow, this must be perfect. Get into a global corporation. At that time, I was thinking they had that management trainee role, and that's to be very clear, very exciting because okay, this is structured. You get trained, get exposed, and then there'll be a career path within the organization. So confusion as to where to fit. And I ultimately went with option one. I got into some space into the pharmaceutical sector for some time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, straight out of university, biochem, you're wondering, where do I fit? So, at what stage? So, at that stage, what did you believe your life or career would look like? Here you are, straight out of uni, 0 to 3 years post campus.
Yes.
So, where did you feel or believe your career would look like?
I was sure management trainee, one of those big, they're called the audit finance firms, the manufacturing folks. I was like, creme de la, that's the place to be. That's the place to fit and grow because then it seemed there was clarity. You get in and then there'd be clear steps to go forward. So that's what I I pursued and I chased. And you do all these psychometrics and everything. That's what I was pursuing at that point. And I did not get into that for sure.
Curious, so what did you get into?
I discovered, okay, so what do other people who have graduated in this thing do? And I was told, right. So there are these people called pharmaceutical representatives. And their role is a bridge between pharmacy and clinicians. And then go and articulate about the different medical products and medicines that exist to clinicians and to pharmacists so they can know, they can prescribe, they can use, and you can say, I've got the newest antibiotic, I've got the newest antihypertensive. And I was like, oh, wow, my tool fits, my hammer. I found the nail for my hammer.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, great. So then let's do this. Others who are doing this are in that space. And that's what I started with for my first chapter for about 2 or so years.
So yes. So now looking back now, what do you think shaped those early expectations? So you are looking for where you would fit best.
Yes.
And yeah, management training wasn't your thing, so you got into pharma rep. But when you look back now, what shaped those early expectations?
I think it's what some of the statistics you talked about feeling left behind. I would look at peers, friends who we would consider successful at that point,
Yeah.
and where have they gone into, what have they gotten? And those who seemed to get into those spaces looked comfortable. It looked clear. I mean, the world was their it's called canvas because then some of them are multinational corporations as well. So that's what it really was, looking over the fence at, hey, what is Nani, where has so and so gone. That's what shaped that idea of success
Okay.
at that point.
Now, at what point did you realize that your journey might not unfold the way you had imagined?
Well, when the number of job applications versus the number of responses and what came, and what came through, and and what I was getting called to. So I was clearly the industry recognized my hammer, and so
Yeah.
the places where I got most responses were related to my field of training. So some
Okay.
were lab based, some were manufacturing based, and then some was then the medical detailing. And I was like, okay, this involves talking, involves a bit of movement, moving around. So that's at that point I was like, clearly this is not management training is not coming up. This seems to be the line. I can now see others who are in this space from other campuses and that sort of thing doing this. So I was like, okay, let's do this and let's see where it can go. Let's see how far. Yeah.
How did you make sense of that moment at the time? You've made the applications, results are not coming back as you'd hoped for. Obviously, there's a lot of self-awareness that will have to come about, because if you are an introvert, farm rep jobs is a lot of talking, a lot of
Yeah.
extrovertedness. So
Yeah.
looking back, how did you make sense of that moment at the time?
I'm very fortunate that I had parents. My parents, as they brought us up, were, what's the term I will use? I think I would say agnostic about careers, in the sense that they were not really big about this. You've got to be a this or a that or the other. The
Okay.
one thing that they were clear still are, was whatever opportunity you get, apply yourself to it to the best that you can, and then grow to the most that you can. So for me, when that whatever I was looking for did not come up, and this I kind of like reflected back. Okay, this is my space now. This is what I have got. Let's see what is possible and within this space and how far that can go. I was also fortunate. The first job I got was the equivalent. Industries have, you being in HR, they have different. They're known for different hiring strategies. So there are some who are known to really do big, good trainers, right? And they will bring in fresh graduates, and they are clear they want to train them and give them very solid training. But with an acknowledgement, they'll not pay that high, but also that they will have trained a solid group who then now go and move into the market. So I got one of those, and that was good in terms of then getting the skills needed to do the work, both in terms of the technical, like understand this is what you're really trying to make happen, and then the interactions about the marketing and the selling, and you're not just selling to everyone on the street. These are highly skilled professionals, very busy professionals. How do you get ins? How do you make your pitches? And how do you get the time, right? So that those two things helped. Once the mind frame of whatever space you get, do the most you can with that, which was helpful. And then secondly, that as I started, I got quite solid training, and felt well equipped, and I was clear how this can go forward.
It's interesting that you did your degree in biochem.
Yes.
Yes, you didn't find yourself fully as in medicine.
Yes.
However, you are still within the scope of medicine, and you speak about having that induction, that having that really good training that really helped you not only understand the product but also appreciate the value of, you see, the audience you're going to seek out there.
Correct. It was quite fitting, now when I look back at it, because then at that point, to be clear, I was still making applications to go on to med school. So I was still looking for opportunities and places. By then, the parallel degree programs hadn't started, so entry was really competitive back then. And so looking outside of the country, looking within the country. So I was still exploring as I worked in that space. And then later, changed from pursuing that.
Okay. Out
Yeah.
of curiosity, what line of medicine or what kind of doctor specialty were you seeking to achieve?
I was clear what I was not interested in. I was not clear what I wanted to do. I did not want to go into the brain for sure. So some meaning surgery, meaning
Yeah.
surgery.
Okay.
So psychiatry was a bit interesting, and the heart for some
Okay.
reason. Yeah. So a cardiologist at that point, I hadn't figured out those specifics further down, but I was like, yeah, I think I want to work around with the heart or like the mind.
Interesting. Now I can see how psychology came to be in the
Oh,
picture.
however, there's more. Yes, yes, there's more.
Yes. So as your career unfolded, what
Yeah.
helped you decide where to place your energy and attention?
So I've talked about chapters. Huh? So there was a chapter one, which was this medrep role,
Yeah.
and it's kind of interesting. So I did the first. So I worked with three companies about a 2.5 or 3 year span.
Okay.
So company one, training, like I talked about, really great. And just like I mentioned, I mean, after 8 months, kind of poached or got an opportunity to go elsewhere. And the second place that I got was great because they gave company car. It was quite a prestigious looking kind of place. Although that also had its challenges, but anyway, but so I did that for some time.
Yeah.
But in the course of doing with company B for some time, after after about a year, we're a team of three for the line. We used to have like company lines which you do within the distributorship. So we had done plans, we had been working, and so we were called to office on a Monday before we go out to the field to do everything else, to go and sell, of course, market, sell, do what you need to. So we're in office and they say, hey, what's happening? We're like, we don't know, let's go find out as we head out. And once we got to office, we were told, well, gentlemen, it's been real. This approach of ours is not working. So we are closing this job. We are closing this work. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're like, I'm sorry, what? And there was no sign, there had been no communication, there had been no like continuous tracking to say that, look, we're kind of off target, we're kind of below target, we're this, there had been no indication whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally, I think I had my bag in the car for wherever we were going, was like a week or something. People went different routes. And that was a shocker. You were like, whoa, say what? The three of us are looking at each other, looking at them, looking at each other. And I mean, okay, maybe you've had this conversation, but it's not a long conversation. It's quick, it's swift. You and your reactions, you'll deal with them as you're going. Yeah?
Yeah.
And this young, innocent man that I am, just from campus, I think a year or two out, I'm like, okay, so can I go drop my bag with a car and then come back? I was so naive. Gosh, I was so naive. I was so naive, right? Hey, yo, Z, here's your letter. Whatever you have, here's a box. Put your things in a box. You go. You will come back at some time in your own way. Or in fact, either you and your box you leave now, or you come back at some point to pick your things, right? So yeah, so that was kind of like really the major shift, our major shock for chapter one, for
Yeah.
chapter of the working. God was totally out of the blue. And so I stayed in that space for about, I was fortunate then. I stayed in that space for about a month or two, got a job still within pharmaceuticals. That left a very bad taste in my mouth. And I was like, this space, no. And then also during that break, I call it a break, right? I pursued my first formal training in a helping profession, if I call it that. So I did a certificate course in psychology, in counseling, sorry, um, for about a 2 week. About a 2 week. I was like, okay, this has been an area of interest. If it's not fully medicine, I then also learned there are other ways you can get into the space and not without being medicine per se. So then during that break, I did that training, and that kind of set the foundation for that.
I'm trying to imagine,
Mhm.
it's a Monday morning.
Mhm.
You are all set to start your week, and then you're handed your termination unceremoniously.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not good. That's really bad employee experience.
Yes.
And then you walk away. It's not like you have another job waiting for you or you planned out. You've just been terminated. Yeah, but HR practice at work now.
And you're fairly young in the job market, so I'd never seen these sort of things. I didn't know these sort of things exist
Yeah.
in that way, right? I mean, this is This is my what month? Almost 18th month of employment in general, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, that was a shock.
that's an absolute. So I can actually see how that redirected your thinking because of that very poor experience with the second company. 2 to 3, yes, you did get another job 2 to 3 months post this, termination. Now I
Yes.
can see, your mindset changing and having gone to do the certificate in counseling. Was there a point where you realized you were going into something you hadn't originally planned?
Yes. So post the certificate program stamped and affirmed, like, okay, this is something I would really like to do, right? This is the space I would like to do. And as it did that, there was still some letting go. Remember, I've been doing applications, I've been following up on various paths to get into medical school. So there was still quite some fights, both internally for me and also with those who were supporting me through that process, because we've kind of gone X number of meters down the road trying to make this other thing happen. And you're like, hey, now, and what is this you want to do now? And you're like, okay, fine, but are you sure? Are you? And I think, in fact, I can't remember whether the certificate program was as a result of this discussion. Like, okay, first try some training and just to confirm and just to check if this is what you want to do. Yeah. So there was challenges of in terms both internally for myself, clarifying that's a route I want to take, and with those who supported. But ultimately, it was clear, and when I was I like saying by myself and just like thinking very soberly, okay, and yeah, what are you feeling most aligned to? Where can you add most value? Where do you think you want to grow? What is really um, making you tick or getting you excited? Of the two, both could still say above the two, the psychology side was more.
Okay. And I can see that period whereby you've started your career in this, you're a mid rep, and all of a sudden, because of this really poor experience, it has you thinking, is this really what I want to do in the long term? If is this how the next job is going to be?
Mhm.
What does that mean for me? And now that self-discovery period where you want to, okay, so what's next for me? But also you don't want to invest fully just in case it is not who you are or what you're about.
Correct.
Now, what did the building years look like for you? The seasons where you are simply putting in the work.
I, I I think putting in the work started more in chapter two of my career journey, because remember chapter one has been what, like 18 months, 18, and
Yeah.
then I did another job for about 2 months. Um, so that's where the putting in the work started. But so let me provide some context. So after this job ends, after I've done the certificate in psychology, I'm like, okay, I know in counseling, I'm like, all right, let me pursue university now at the master's level for a branch of, of psychology that was closest to psychiatry, actually. It was called clinical psychology. It is called clinical psychology. And so it's around March, April of that year. And at that point, when I was applying to the university locally, their intake was September. So I was like, okay, so then let me look around for something to do until September as I wait for this to come through. Um, and my chapter two started. That's when I got to the development space, and so I got a job um, with Population Services International, and then they, they're very big, have been, still are big on a lot of public health around HIV, family planning, um, malaria programs. And so I got a job doing education to communities on how to use healthcare products for prevention, mosquito nets, water treatment, and that sort of thing. So I was like, okay, great. I'm still helping. I'm still contributing somehow positively. I am waiting for my application to come through. And as well, this job is taking me to interesting places I have not been before, because you get really to go to communities and you go around. So I was like, okay, let me put in the work here. Let me now do this, do the most, learn as most as I can, see as much of the country as I can as we moved around and learn as well. So I started putting in the work as I waited for remember this for the application to come through in about 6 months.
Yeah.
Talk about being in the company for 10 years, right? This is where I say, like, back to your statistic, something about unplanned career growth and that. But so what happened is the university eventually either never set up the course or it didn't quite take off or there were delays. And and so I realized, again, going back to the mantra of with where you are, do the most that you can, learn the most, and be the best you can be. I really just started putting in the work and I shifted and I started gaining skills, more skills. So initially, just like experience, let me just see the experience. But I said, now, what skills do I need to do to build to become better at the job? And so I started learning what needs to be done to be effective in what we call behavior change communication, in planning, and that sort of thing. And then I changed my application for university to another university. And I was based in Kisumu when I started this job with PSI. And I realized now I need to get myself back to Nairobi because my master's in psychology I eventually ended up doing that at USIU. And so I come back to Nairobi. And this is where putting in the work and having a goal, huh? Because now I had a purpose. I was like, okay, I need to pay for the course, first of all. I need to be where the course is being offered. By then, this whole distant virtual learning and e-learning was not really a thing. We're talking about 04. Yeah, 04. So then I really started putting in the work and looking for what other opportunities were within the organization that could be happening Nairobi based, and started building the skills towards that. The goal and the vision was, hey, get into this training program, be able to pay for it, and be where it is being offered. What do you need to do that? You need to move from fields. What do you need to move from fields? You need to build XYZ skills, and to the mentorship piece. I did speak to managers, to supervisors. I did signal, look, I'm looking for XYZ, I'm looking to do this and this. If there's a role, let me know, and I should to grow. And yeah, so then I put in the work in that way, and then grew and fortunately got a position in Nairobi. And then from there, it's just what's the next position you could get? What else can I grow to? What else can I grow to as I study? Until I reached as far as I could before I left out chapter 3 of my career, and then started again putting in the work to do as much as you can, grow as much as you can within chapter 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you've shared is something that was recently covered in a previous episode of Unplugged, to do with pivoting, where when you are very intentional with what you want and you've identified what it is that you want to do, you put in the work to prepare you for the next step. And as you've clearly said, you are based out in Kisumu and you wanted to come back to Nairobi.
Yeah.
But obviously, Kisumu, you're in field. Nairobi will be more office based. So you have to prepare yourself for what that next role is going to look like, what skills are required. And what I hear is that intentional mapping out of the next step. In as much as these other external forces, you need to be in Nairobi to do your master's, but you're also intentional with, yes, I need to be in Nairobi to do my master's, but for me to be in Nairobi, I have to have X, Y, Z skills to do a certain role, so that the next opportunity that comes in, I'm ready for it.
I've just realized I'm not noted. I wanted to say, let me tell you Mina, and your second name is Mina. Let me something we talked about. I look back at a painful experience with gratitude, and this is about the being let go experience that I had. That gave me super clear clarity that any employer is a relationship of service both ways. There needs to be something that the employer feels is of value they're getting, and there needs to be something that I feel is of value I'm getting. And that since having that experience, it formed me to be super clear that you must be intentional, and note that your employer is also being intentional. Remember where I was, there had been no warning signs, no nothing, but it meant there was someone running the numbers. There was someone looking at the sheets all across the point.
Yeah.
And I told myself, just always be aware that's happening for them and have something for yourself as well, which is something I still advocate for to date.
Now, you said something very important. The the poor experience in chapter one readied you for chapter two
Mhm.
with that crystal clear clarity of where or what you want to do. And also, from the sounds of it, it made you more aware to look out for the signs. It doesn't have to be made clear, but you're just looking out for the signs of, okay, so if this was to happen, what next? Because previously you'd been caught out unawares, and it's like you'd made it your mission never to be caught out again.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One
So,
hundred. Mhm.
and I mean, once you've been caught out once, you really don't want that to happen to you again.
I was, yeah.
So the question then is, were there moments when progress was happening, but it wasn't immediately visible? So you're out in Kisumu or you're back in Nairobi. Were there those moments putting in the effort, but it doesn't seem visible enough?
Yes, there were. Uh, one of the first ones for me was when I was doing my studies. When I was doing my studies, so I was fortunate and I was thankful. I'm back here and I'm here, and I was putting in the work because I was clear on the relationship. This helped me do my studies, helped me get forward. But I what's the word? My head was down on just get through this period to be able to graduate and finish, right? And but somewhere towards the end, I was like, hang on, have I had growth, like career growth within the period, or have I just been, totally thankful for having been brought to Nairobi, which of course I was, right? So, and then when I looked up and looked around, I was kind of like, hey, hang on, hang on, hang on. Now I need to have conversations. And I started having the conversations about, look, I have contributed in this way, I have done, and I was also very clear about what value I bring to the table. I've contributed in this way, I have done this and this, and I'd like to see some form of understand, opportunities for growth, and growth meant both scope and of course remuneration as well. So yes, I would say there's about a two and something a year for sure period where I was like, hang on, am I because it's clear I'm only studying, am I not progressing? Am I not getting opportunities and that sort of thing? That was the main time when I felt that. And after then I always continued engaging in conversations about, what what needs, what are the indicators of success of doing this particular rule well, and great, what next, what could be next, what else is next, I would be interested in XYZ, what are you looking at, because like I said from back then, I was like, look, this is a relationship, it's got to be a win-win, and continuously engage in those conversations.
Interesting. How did those conversations go? Because it can go two way. You can either have a line manager who's open and willing to give you, that advice, that mentorship, that coaching. At the same time, you will have that line manager who will be very keen to have you sit where you are, maybe because sometimes, and this is a very poor sentence that they use, you're really good at what you do.
Mhm.
I need you at that spot because you're really good at what you do. But then there's also this other type of line manager who, yes, you're good at what you do, but they are very keen to, throw a challenge at you. How did that conversation go? And consider it's back in the day.
Yes, there were multiple conversations. So with line manager and with HR as well. No? So there were like multiple conversations. Some were more of that. Hey, you're really good at this. I want you to kind of like be around. And it makes sense, because then you add value and make the department or the individual person's life easier. And so there was that. But like I was, first of all, I think I must acknowledge that organizations that have a structured performance improvement plan, I think, are also more open then to encouraging conversations, because often they will then have like a 360-degree kind of, so they encourage you to speak to X, to speak to Y, to speak to Z. So then hawezi funikiwa sana with only one person, kind of, you cannot be limited by only one person. So I do want to acknowledge that, because it's not just me being good at it, but also the environment kind of gave opportunity for that. And so when I had a conversation, in some instances where I felt there was limitation, if I had 360-degree feedback from often seniors that was encouraging me to do more, you say, to be a package that will be presented and said, look, I have had this, and I hear that. When I speak with HR, I'll be like, but I'm also getting this kind of feedback and support and that sort of thing. And because the organization then had that system, it enabled, it allowed, it facilitated for me to push. And I can also be persistent. Yeah. That helps.
That helps.
Yeah,
So
that
how
helps.
did so how did you remain grounded in such periods? Because there are periods where there's plenty of success, and then
Yeah.
there are also periods where you just it feels like you're stalled. There's progress, but you're not seeing the movement coming. How did you stay grounded?
I don't know if I did. I don't know if I stayed grounded, to be honest. Uh, I think for sure there was efforts to move, for sure,
Yeah.
during those periods, trying to find where else can I go. At one at I think there were two other contributing factors. At one point, there was one HR director who was a very patient gentleman and very systematic. So he also said, look, come, let's have a conversation, right? We hear you, we're trying to work within structures, da, 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 da. And then kind of like broke down, look, we recognize this kind of growth is what you have had. We had plans for this and this to happen, and kind of like encourage it for, okay, just hang in there. I want you to know that you are hard, and we are trying to make things happen. So that helped. That helped at that time. And like I said, also I was looking, I was looking elsewhere at the same time. So perhaps it's just an issue of internally things worked out before externally something else came by.
I like the fact that, open conversations and, that clarity in communication was part and parcel of the journey. Not everyone is lucky to have, such a structured or an opportunity to express yourself, to be heard, and for the other party to express themselves and be clear in what it is that they're saying, and parties walk away satisfied with how the conversation has gone. So you've come a long way. You've grown your career. Here you are. Now, many careers go through stretches where things feel steady, but not necessarily exciting.
Mhm.
Have you experienced seasons like that? Because so far from your stories, it seems like everything has been, all good and bubbly.
I think I've had fortune. Yes, chapter two was a lot of growth in particular ways. Chapter three did have a bit of did have seasons of that, of have I reached the, it's the same old, and actually a bit also towards the end of chapter two. So if I can be clear, my measure of even why I moved from chapter two to chapter three in terms of employers was when I realized, when I start having language that is very past referencing. Here we used to do things. This is how we do, instead of what else can be done differently. For me, I reflect as like, okay, hang on, that's a red flag. Like there is something. This is definitely not as exciting as it was for you, and you're kind of becoming like maybe a stumbling block for yourself and possibly for others, right? So I had that towards the end of chapter two, and by the fortunately something opened up. I hadn't fully thought that something opened up, and it was new and different, and that excited me again. In other in chapter three of my career, which was again another 12 years, I did have, at about, I guess, year seven, and I think year 11, periods where I was like, but what am I doing? Is this it? Is this the most I can do? Am I adding any more value? Are we adding any more value? Have I been too much in this space? And what did I do then? Actually, what I did then is I have always had an eye on working with people. And at different points, when I think back, I would go to get some sort of training that would help me like reconnect. I would go and do some sort of role I taught. I was a part-time lecturer at some point,
Mhm.
some, and that was an effort to stay connected to the psychology part of my training and working with people. I gave talks with to at schools. Again, that was a way to stay, do I say, excited with what I'm doing or with what's happening in my life. Those are other ways I think in which I tried to get through those periods. Either others go back to what I'd consider, say, like a true passion or like an old flame or like an old interest, and try and rekindle it, and that would keep me excited. And to be clear, the with the places I have been, I have had opportunity to engage with leadership about what else is there that I could do.
So I hear a journey of someone that, you started out, there was that confusion. Where do I fit? Where do I belong? Started off nicely, med rep, had a poor experience, got into chapter two. Chapter two is more, it's very heavy on the invest in yourself side. You're seeking, where is my passion lying? What's next for me? What is fulfilling? How do these conversations look like? And then now you're talking about chapter three, where you still want to have that, pizzazz in you. You just don't want to feel like you're turning a page as you
Mhm.
go.
Mhm.
So on one hand, you're a part-time lecturer. On the other hand, you're giving talks to schools. What I hear is a journey that requires a lot of patience and perseverance. What advice would you give someone who is, journeying through? You, the fire in you is still there, but it's not to the extent that you would like.
Mhm.
But there is, there are those periods, there are moments of growth. It
Mhm.
can be a dip or it can you going up, but they both require or demand for patience and perseverance. What would be your advice for someone who's going through that phase in life? And I know this will also touch in terms of progress. How do we measure progress? What's the definition of success or progress along the way? Because when you're going down, when you're going through a deep, patience is usually very thin.
Mhm.
You hardly see progress coming. So talk to that individual going through your experience. Talk to that to an individual, even myself. How do we, the patience, the perseverance, and progress? How do we balance that out?
I think what I would say is uh, a clarity on where you want to be. What is it that I'm trying to get at, right? Ultimately. So that, and that is a process of definition at one point, and you keep on reflecting back on it. Because if if the target, if the goal is clear, that really becomes my reference point for, am I at a plateau with what I'm doing now, or am I truly making progress towards that goal? So sometimes where, when I look back and when I felt kind of like stuck or flatlined, I would have to remind myself, okay, what do you want? What were you really aiming towards? And therefore, with what is going on now, is it taking you closer? Is it taking you further away? And now, can be a period of a year or 2 years. But that, what some people call, what's either your why, like your goal, your target, like what am I trying to get to? And if that is, the more that is clear, the more you can reference and check, am I truly making progress? Have I flatlined? And then you will see, okay, maybe I've added, I don't know, call it 2 years experience, maybe I added this other skills, is it taking me closer to that state? So reminding, refreshing, reminding, put it up on the wall, put it up somewhere, and like, okay, this is what this in your annual plan, in your annual 2 year plan or something, this is where I wanted to go. Am I closer, or am I not any closer to that? That for me is what has helped steer the course. Now, with that in mind, there's that, of course, there's the ideal, there's like the gold standard. And then I like having a three case kind of scenario. So there's a gold standard. There is like this is what I'd be really excited about getting, and then this is what I'd be happy about getting. So that's, call it a step or three, kind of lower. And then there's got to be an irreducible minimum. So then I have a range, that gives us some room because life is not linear and things change and shift. So then as I keep on checking against where I'm going, I'm checking, am I within that range? Right? And if I'm below my reducible minimum, then you panic and you go like, okay, then something's got to really shift. But if I'm like, okay, I'm not at gold, but I'm with where I was supposed to be happy, I'm between happy and between reducible minimum, then I'm still somewhere and I know I've got a gap to try and get to gold, right? Or maybe, hey, gold, you'll evaluate and say maybe gold was not is not there for now, and so I hold on to this and move forward. I do want to say something else, Rose. As this um there are some practicalities of life. I have a family, for example, right? And there are times whereby you've got to look at I think that yourself as a whole person, and not just the career aspect. So there's got to be sometimes like, okay, I am almost at irreducible minimum, but I've also got obligations, right? And so I've got to figure out how do I, because if I am unable, or if I'm not able to meet my obligations, then that's still going to cause me problems, right? I can't just say because I didn't get this job or this position, then I'm going to walk away, or I'm going to, go and look for something else. So I'd also encourage us to look at ourselves as the whole person and say that I'm almost at irreducible minimum, but it's for this reason as I work towards gold standard.
Yeah.
The other thing I do want to mention, and like I said before, is the one place I'm at for work may not give me everything I need, right? So then there might be other escapes. I've done photography in the past. I like photography. I've done that. You run, you do something else that somehow gives you some balance. And to some extent, you might even say the current job you're doing helps you do this, get this other escape, and be a bit able to then cope. And the whole person isn't able to keep on moving.
So reviewing yourself 360, not just as one facet of yourself,
Correct.
and identifying, your escapes. And your escapes can be your hobbies, your talents, and not just investing into one line of yourself, but also growing and grooming these other elements of you.
And that is from coaching, that's from psychology, and that's from personal experience. When you are let go and let go of your job, your whole identity can go. I mean,
True.
like, your whole identity goes there. Your car has gone. Your my title has gone, and that's when you realize this is not the totality of who I am.
So that actually speaks about, identifiers in our life.
Mhm.
The people when they go, there are people that have reached retirement age, as an example, and they're looking forward to retirement. But the moment they retire, all of a sudden they have lost purpose in their life, because what they used to identify themselves with, or the job that they used to hold, was their main identifier. And what I hear is the need to, tear away from all these external, factors, and come down to the core of who you really are, so that regardless of that job, regardless of the car, regardless of whatever it is, yes, it can, boost your
Mhm.
identity and your profile, but you should be more than, your job. You should be more than the things that you own, or the tangibles, or the things that can actually be taken away from you.
And I'd add to that and say, Rose, that you are so you can even look at the job as you are still the skilled operations director, you're still the skilled marketing director, or marketing professional. Let me call it professional, not the title. So not the title. So you still are worthy in that sense, that you have skills that you have garnered, the skills that you have put to play, the skills that you have worked with for a long time. And it's a mind shift about, yes, you will not apply them with the heart of this organization and with this title, but to wherever else you go, post retirement or post job end, you still have skills that were of value and are of value, and it's about finding a fit of where to apply them.
Transferable skills, that's what I hear.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Mhm.
So over time, what have you had to unlearn about success or achievement? So growth is a lot of learning, but also there's unlearning and relearning. So what have you had to unlearn?
Um, I think I have unlearned the role of a title in terms of growth. I think I have, meaning that my growth or happiness should not be tied to then uh, director so or CEO that or that sort of thing. Um, the Gosh, my second point has just escaped me. That was linked to that. But that's a big one about. Oh, then about I've also unlearned about um, ideal organizations, like ideal places that when I get to X or Y or Z, then that is how to look for a job. Like, of course, there's certain traits to look for, but there's no like one ideal. And even then, organization may be ideal, but your line manager may not. So there are all those factors. So it's not like guaranteed. The other thing I've come to learn is the definition of success, aside from, and maybe it's an age thing or something, but aside from title and remuneration, which are important, 100%, I agree. But I have come to unlearn the definition of success to include, do I say flexibility and or freedom? So um, that success for me now would be positions that allow me, of course, to do my basic provision for self and others. But aside from that, then to have the room to do things that are also important to me. So for example, if I can have positions that allow me every once in a while to be able to go and watch, you know, the children's performance, to go and be able to pick or drop. That I have come to place a big value on on that aspect as well. So I would say unlearning the definition of success or of a good job, or of a great job. I've also come to unlearn sources of income, like that all my income needs to be from the job, because I had that view in the past and the job ended, right? So then some sort of like, how do you have a mix of activities for income that give you the room and flexibility to continue being, and to stop that of, okay, as I look for a job, it needs to meet my needs, say 100 or 120%. So I think those are some of the things that have come, that I have been changing or that I have unlearned. um no, these are not unlearned. This has been consistent about trying to be in a work environment and role that is aligned to your values. That's important. So that every day when I wake up, I am happy with what we do, with what my work does and contributes to. That gives me, at least gives me peace. I'm not saying it works for everyone, but it gives me peace that what I contribute to is aligned to what I believe in.
You're mentioning things that a lot of, in particular Gen Z, that's what they are seeking in modern day jobs. So, for example, one source of income is not something that they subscribe to.
Mhm.
And to be very honest, it's important for you not to rely on just one source of income. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
People are seeking opportunities that allow for flexibility, agility, the opportunity for you to be innovative and to actually apply, and you can actually see the impact that you are actually,
Mhm.
deriving from what it is that you're doing. And it's, when you look back to the X's and the boomers, it's, do the job and get your salary.
True.
But come to the millennials, it's more of, okay, is there value in
Mhm.
what it is that you're doing? Gen Zs come in and they want not just that value, but more freedom. I don't want to be boxed in a cubicle,
Yes.
9 to 5. I can operate from whichever angle as long as the results get
Yes.
done. But that is going to demand a lot of, mindset shifts, because there are a lot of people that believe you need to go to the office to work. You need to be in a tie, a suit
Mhm.
to get the job done. So the definition of the workplace, the definition of the workspace is changing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you should go in whatever attire you want to, all willy nilly and not looking professional. All people are seeking is that freedom to be authentic as they get on with their day. Now, what do you value now than earlier in your career? You might not have paid as much attention to, and I think you have alluded to that, that
Mhm.
visibility, the time, the personal time. What
Yes.
else have you, it's part of the unlearning, but what else do you value now than before?
For sure, the flexibility, and the flexibility still is big. I have come to has even gotten more prominence now. And to be clear, it's not about not delivering on what needs to be done. Like, we'll be clear, come up with a plan. I've managed projects, I've worked on projects, so come up with your project plan and your timeline for deliverables. So that will still be honored. But the ability to be able to work around my other priorities or commitments, or things important to me as I deliver this, which is important to the organization, is something that is for sure. I think top. What Another thing that's coming up now is about values, and it was there before, but again, just like asking yourself, okay, like I've had some places where you want to apply, and they're like, but who's this? Who's behind this? Okay, what do they stand for? What do they do, and the rest. I mean, if you have the room to be a bit more selective, that's also something that is key or big for me, because like I said, I want to feel that as I contribute on a daily basis, I'm living a net positive with my contributions and those that I'm supporting. So I'd say those two: the flexibility and kind of like aligned values as I go forth.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
At this stage in your journey, what keeps you curious? What comes next?
What keeps me curious about what comes next, career wise, or like in.
Let's go 360 because
Right.
you're more than your career.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned, nowadays you will be keen on what a brand is about, what are their values. You're not just throwing your application for the sake of it. You want to throw in your application because your values align with what it is that they are seeking. Now, at this stage of your life where there are very many facets of you, what keeps you curious on what's next?
I think building is something I'm passionate about. So what do I mean by this? Like, what can I set up and grow for self and for or with others. So then, how do I support enterprises, small business grow from this to that, and to the next level and the next? That for me has a lot of excites me. But okay, I see these problems, but I see these opportunities. I see these resources. I see these opportunities as well on how we can do that. That is something that excites me continually. People or working. I want to say through people, like getting a team and seeing capacity grow, seeing ability grow, so that then, and that's kind of linked to the first, because that's the only way I can grow things, if I'm able to get and work with people who can then take things on, because your capacity is limited as an individual. So people as well is something that gets me excited about. Okay, how do we set this up? How do we grow and develop this person? How do we check that there's growth, and identify then the right person? I come from the school of thought of, there's also got to be an idea of getting the right person in the right seat. There's a book about that, getting the right person in the right seat. So also checking, okay, do we have the right mix of folks? Are they in the right seats? Should this person move from this seat to the other? So people is the other thing that gets mixed. So building and people. On an individual level, I, again, I'm curious about how people think, process, and analyze things. And I mean this from my kids to other people interact with. It just so that just those that we can have such diverse perspectives on the same issue is, I find that exciting and interesting, and that gets to me every time I interact with it. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. When I look at, the chapters that you have shared with us, chapter one is to me comes through as a discovery phase,
Mhm.
trying to get your footing in what it is that you want and what the future holds. Chapter two comes through as you hunker down. It was your hunker down and growth phase,
Mhm.
where it was very heavy in investing in yourself, pivoting within the same organization, identifying what it is that you want the next. Then chapter three is coming through as purpose and values driven phase,
Mhm.
where you've gotten more and more intentional. You are seeking more satisfaction in what it is that you're doing, not just out of the job, but away from the job, and identifying what it is that you are growing or morphing into. I mean, you mentioned what is your irreducible minimum? Yeah.
Mhm.
What are you okay with? What are you happy with? And what's that gold standard? And how will you be in the various phases, the aspect of patience and perseverance. Now, putting this into mind, when you meet younger professionals who feel uncertain about their path, what perspective do you try to offer them? You've been there, you've done that.
Um, Before I offer my perspective, because again, my experiences are mine at my time, based on my past and all that sort of thing. I really try to spend time with them, understanding where they are at and what makes them be who they are at that moment in time. Because I think often um, I think there's one of the statistics about feeling left behind. We as individuals are quick to compare to someone else, and I do it. I've done it without contextualizing either myself or themselves, right? And I have found when you take some time to better understand self, and why is it that either you're feeling excited or stuck or whatever is where you are now. Let's just kind of unpack that a bit. Uh, People may find, oh, hang on, actually, I do have what a lot of what I'm looking for, or hang on, I am clearer now that I am unhappy because, or I need this because, and having spoken with a couple of them in the past, that time of investing that time in self-reflection and kind of unpacking and getting that clarity, and then coming up with those, I am here and really I want to be there, and that whole range I talked about, I find it really, really most helpful. Then every person can chart their path and go forward.
It makes sense because, I think we often make the mistake of comparing ourselves to others, and it's human nature.
Yes.
But we forget to realize that we each have our own journey, we each have our own path to make. But at the same time, there's also the community pressure, you
Mm-hmm.
know where you're coming from, the environment that you're coming from. Let's say if you're coming from a background of lawyers or
Mm-hmm.
doctors, there's a certain expectation that if you happen to be a creative, you will be frowned upon. You will be deemed not to be, serious enough. I mean,
Yes.
growing up, anyone who wanted to be a musician or an artist, someone used to wonder, are you really serious? Do you really think that it's going to put food on the table? But with time, we've actually come to appreciate that, the creatives, the arts are doing really, really well. But the perception or the experience of our parents or the ones before them, they had no appreciation for that. And maybe those were the times then. Now it's a different thing altogether. So yes, I think it's important that the younger generation, as you come through, it maybe be it the work environment. I think also the need for them to understand that success is not built overnight, because I think it's something that they struggle with. Someone will come in a job, and in a few months they expect a promotion and a salary raise, etc. Yet they are not there in terms of their skills and experience, but now that patience, that perseverance that you talked about becomes a challenge for them.
May I?
Yes.
Yeah, so I want to react to something and then come to the success point. So um, also part of the the challenge for like you're calling young professionals and the rest is sometimes when they are skilled, so when you're skilled and therefore you can handle many different things, it even sometimes adds to the confusion more, because then you're like, look, yeah, I could take this, I could take that, I could take the other. And organizations will quickly recognize that, and of course move you around as quickly as much as possible, and you can go down many years without having taken but hang on, what do I want, what, because yes, you're good at it and you can raise to the occasion, and that's a good thing. But going back to the point of the self-reflection, just being clear and intentional as the various options come up, and then you can kind of be clear about where you want to go, and align it to your values. The second thing I wanted to mention in the musician thing, I had a friend when he was growing up told his father he wants to be a musician. He's now a very he's a lawyer and financial advisor thing, but his father told him that music is a hobby, and is not a career. And so I know I say that lightly, but that we must also acknowledge the fact that especially if they are paying for the fees, that's a reality, and that's something you need to navigate and see how best. I've seen people take different routes. There's some who will then do the degree being asked for, and some, leave it on the table once they're done and then pursue what they want to do. There are others who look for some middle ground. I can't remember. I was talking with someone who read about it, but they were interested in music but pursued law, and ultimately ended up becoming legal advisor for how to contract for musicians or how to produce or something. So then that gets you some kind of sweet spot in the middle. And again, so this goes back to then working with each person to see what's your particular circumstance and how best can we get. Let's clarify where you are at and how best you can get as close to that as possible. Now to the success point, and I do think again some of the the pressure or the rush for success. Yes, some of it is and what it may not be based on facts or on trends or on looking at how much time one needs to build to get to a particular position. And yes, people need they may need some advice about how much time that takes. But I also think it's not necessarily a bad thing. It can be if there's the ambition to grow, and some of this could be handled by saying, look, this is what are available as far as growth options are concerned. If we find some, and you work out, of course I'm talking ideal here, if they can work out a win-win that says, look, if you're able to grow this by X, Y, or Z, the company benefits and then you benefit with growth as well, and we see how that goes forward. And then there's the redefinitions. There's the multiple ways you can look at growth or success. No matter how much growth a company gets, ultimately the pyramid always goes narrowing towards the top. So we can't have, or but even though you have 10 VPs, really, then they're not really functional in that way. So you've then got to ask yourself, what are other growth opportunities? Is it different projects, different kind of work, right? That demands a different skill set. Is it different postings, different markets kind of thing? So I then hold my position if I go to a different market. And those are ways that I have seen once someone reflects and says, yeah, that would still be growth for me because I'm still adding value. I'm still shifting things. I think many of those challenges come, and maybe you've seen more of this than I have, when I'm doing the same thing that I've been doing for a while, and that's so if that can be done in a different space for a different line of the business, maybe for a different customer or that sort of thing. Going back to let's define what success could be for you. And it's not necessarily being the VP always, but it could be these other opportunities. Could be some travel, could be some flexi time, could be, there are different ways in which you identify what is important and then present it to the organization in a way that's a win-win. But I do want to underscore, I think it's a good thing if someone's asking or looking for more, especially if they're adding value. And it's about then how do we make this fit on both ends.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
To the final question of tonight. If someone listening today feels like their journey is taking longer or unfolding differently than expected, what would you want them to remember?
if the journey is taking longer or unfolding
Unfold.
than they expect.
Yes. You see, it sounds like a summary of your life.
Yeah, I think something that I have found very powerful, to be honest, is taking a chance to reflect back on what has my journey been. We often look at and answer that, or look at that point from where am I now, and so you're feeling I'm not moving now because maybe in the past 6 months this hasn't happened or that hasn't happened, but perhaps you have a 10 or 12 year career. And if you look back at how your journey has progressed, and now as we have discussed, I'm seeing, like this for me, you might say, hang on, this actually is is or has been the normal cadence or the normal rhythm of what has been happening for me over time. And perhaps now is for me to stop and look up and say, all right, which turn should I take, left, right, up, down, and recognize I have also grown. So that's what I would say is take the moment, reflect back on what you have done, list it out, and say I started here, I moved here, I've gone there, and not only at this point in time, because that's where sometimes we can get lost and not appreciate the forest for the trees. That would be my biggest practical tip. Just sit and say, okay, hang on, yeah, this is what's happening now. I'm stuck here. Let me just map up this out for the past chapters of my career and see what has happened. Is this repeating itself? Is this normal, or is this actually is this a problem, or is this just in my head?
And not to forget that careers are not linear.
Oh, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Bogo, I cannot thank you enough.
Very,
It's
very good. And lastly, there's
yes.
more. You're more than your career. And lastly, again, there's more.
Mhm.
You're more than your career. So as you look at that, then yeah, this is happening. But what else is happening around? And there's what else is moving forward in that sense. Sorry, back to you.
No, no, no. That's a really good close. Uh, Careers are not linear, and you're more than your career. I think it's something that we all should take away from this conversation. And I cannot thank you enough for taking us through your journey. You came through with three distinct phases: the discovery phase, the growth, you hunkered down phase, and then the purpose and values driven phase. And each and every one of us journey is different, but in one way or another, we can relate, uh, you know, with the highs and the lows that come with everyone's career, be it, you're employed, or even if you are self employed, all these dynamics come into play. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, for sharing your story, for sharing your journey. We really appreciate. And I thank everyone that has joined us live on LinkedIn and YouTube. Thank you so much for that. Feel free to interact with us, even post the session. And if you have a question at this moment in time, feel free to type it out. And I believe Bogo and I will see it and will be more than happy to respond to it. Any final thoughts as we close out, Bogo?
First, to say thank you for the opportunity to engage, tell the story, and I like how you've also helped me repackage the three chapters. I had to I, so one, two, and one, two, and three. Yeah, I think I'll say for the final thoughts is that we should be, we can be more open with flexibility, with changes in what's happening, and we sit and plan our lives. When change happens, it's not always a bad thing. I've talked about what happened in my life that later on became a building block going forward. So let's be open to the change. Let's expect the change, and at that point, figure, okay, so how do I ride the wave, so to speak? That's
So very good close. How do I ride the wave as I progress with life? So thank you so much, Mbogo, and everyone else that joined us tonight. My name is Rosalind Miner, and I will see you on the next episode of Unplugged with Ross. Until then, have a good night, good morning, wherever you're joining us, and I'll see you next time. Thanks and goodbye.
thanks and goodbye.